Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Orgullo Hispano, a podcast by the Hispanic Leaders Network. Happy New Year to you. This is our first official podcast of 2023, and we are excited to introduce our guest for today. But before we do that, we do want to thank our sponsor, the Leadership Empowerment Group, that make this podcast, Orgullo Hispano, available and gives us the option to do that. So thank you to the Leadership Empowerment Group. Next, I'd like to introduce our very special guest. He is our new City of Waco Municipal Judge, Mr. Bobby Garcia. So, Mr. Bobby, thank you so much for being here today.
Nice to meet you. Nice to be here. Thank you.
It is an honor for you to join us. You are our first podcast for 2023. So this is great to have you on here. But really what I want to do is really just get to know you a little bit, get our audience get to know you, introduce you. One of the things that people might not know is that you are really the first Hispanic or Latino municipal judge here in the city of Waco. And so I wanted to see, first and foremost, how does that make you feel?
Well, I really wasn't aware of that, but I did attend Baylor, about 30 years ago. I did attend Baylor for my undergraduate and law school. And I think even at that time, it was kind of impressive. I look back, I think there was a Hispanic mayor.
We've had one before, yes, sir.
There was,
yes.
And that always kind of impressed me. I was always surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, being at Baylor, when I first got there, I think I was dropped off, no car. I had Kmart bags when Kmart was big. Walk up to the dorm, I saw these fancy cars, and I said, okay, there's hardly any minorities here. And I think there were about 200 minorities total when I was there. So,
on campus.
Yeah, so it's kind of coming back. It's kind of interesting that I did learn a little about the history of the municipal court, and so maybe, that's a nice fact. I'm honored,
Well, and we're glad that you're here. I think it's cool to know that, even in conversation with you, that you have the title Waco already from where you were at Baylor as undergrad, but you also did Baylor Law School,
yes,
which is Go Bears, because I'm a Baylor alumni
nice.
As well. So I love that connection.
Yeah.
But I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit more about yourself, like your upbringing, where you're from, your career, et cetera, things like that, so we can get to know you better, sir.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Corpus Christi, Texas. My parents were born in Robstown, Texas, and my grandparents were born in George West, Texas. So that's where our family comes from.
Third generation Texan, huh?
Yeah, third generation Texan. Although, I don't know. I think at one time, Texas was Mexico.
But
so,
that's right.
A lot of times people ask, well, when did you come from Mexico? I said, well,
we've been here.
Yeah, we're already here. So that's my connection to, going back to my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And so born and raised, I went to Mary Carroll High School, and I was always been involved in sports and in leadership.
Okay.
My sister was a really good basketball player, and she went to college on a basketball scholarship, and that kind of paved the way for her actually to, through sports, to get a scholarship. She went to Texas Women's University, and then she became an attorney. Mm-hmm. And I came to Baylor on a LULAC scholarship.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, it was only for 1 year. It was a minimal scholarship, but it helped.
Sure, absolutely.
So I graduated from Carroll High School, came here. That scholarship from LULAC really did help. I think it was an essay contest or something.
Wonderful.
And so I came here, got my bachelor's degree. I started as a computer engineering major, and then realized, okay, I don't want to be in a basement the whole 4 years here. So I switched to political science, got my degree, applied at Baylor Law School, and I was very active in student government.
Okay.
I was the president pro tem of the Student Congress. I lost my very first election here.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I was a freshman, and I'm like, okay, I have no car, no money, and this position came up, Arts and Sciences Representative, and they're taking 6 people. So I said, I'm going to sign up for that. I've always been student body president,
Sure.
Here in my South Texas schools. And then I start seeing these billboards on campus and, literally campaigned, like people had money.
Right, right.
And so I was like, wow, and then there was about 50 people signed up. Everybody had been a student body president. I was like, wow. So I still remembered that because so I just started going, door to door in the cafeterias in the dorms, meeting people. And when they finally announced the results, they put 6 names, drew a line, and then I was 7th. And I was like, goodness. Oh man, I was heartbroken. I said, this is going to be rough. And then the next year I won and just kind of kept going that way with leadership. I founded the Hispanic Cultural Association at Baylor.
Wow.
So we were real active. Yeah, I founded that.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and it kept going for a while. Matter of fact, one of my friends had just got back in touch with me. Her name is Lydia Hernandez.
Okay.
And she was a state representative in Arizona. And she took over when I left Baylor. She took over, and now she's pretty successful in Arizona.
That is a great tie to Waco and Baylor.
Yeah, so Lydia was, and she was also instrumental in recently for the award that I just received.
Tell us about that award, please. I love it, and I want everybody to know what that award is.
Well, in Harlingen, I was the presiding judge of the municipal court. I went from Corpus Christi, where I was had been a practicing attorney, and then I became a jail magistrate, and I was working in the jail. And even prior to that, right out of Baylor Law School, I went to Corpus because my family was there, and I was a DA, and then there was a position for Justice of the Peace that was retiring. He'd been there 40 years, and they wanted a lawyer. So I was in the DA's office, and I was in my 20s, and they said, well, they're looking for somebody to replace him. And I said, well, I doubt I will get that because I'm too young. And so they went through the selection process, the county commissioners, and they didn't pick anybody. So they said, well, the staff said, you should apply for it. So I applied, and I got it. And so at that time, I became what I was told the youngest attorney judge in Texas. Wow. And so that kind of started my judicial experience. But then I left it because it was a lot of pressure to be in your 20s and to be a judge. Everybody was, what are you doing here? You put a warrant on my mom or, something like that. They'd be finding you places at HEB and be like,
that's no fun at all.
Yeah. So I was out there more probably than most, judges, and people would see me. So I said, you know what, I'm going to private practice. So I did the private practice. I actually was in the home healthcare business for 25 years. I had a very successful home healthcare business because my mom and my uncles and aunts are all nurses.
Okay.
So I did that. But then this Harlingen job came up. I went there. Was an outsider. I got chosen, and what I saw was that when I first started the job, I started doing magistration at the jail, and I kept seeing these high school students in jail a lot, and they were in there for things that were very serious, but you could tell that they didn't really understand the consequences. And there was this one kid. He was a real popular guy, real good-looking, athletic, young guy, going off to college, played football. Well, he shows up to the jail, and, I read the report, and I was like, wow, okay, it's a very serious report. So what had happened was he was at a light, and this other car comes up revving the engine. And, of course, he had a, teenage boy, nice car. He decides when the light turns green, they take off.
To
race. And he didn't make the light. Oh. And so he hit another car and killed the people in the car. So, it went literally from a future of going to college, maybe playing sports, like your whole future ahead of you, to now he's here before me and I have to set his bond. And I have to tell him what he's charged with. And knowing that he might not be out for the next 40 years. And I don't think he knows that.
Sure.
Because what happens in cases like that is you set the bond, and of course there's rules to it, and you consider their ability to pay, but then you also consider the community, and how they're going to feel. And with those type of cases, no matter what you said, everybody's gonna be on Facebook. If it would have been me, it would have been 5 million, and and the judges get criticized, and the community upset when there's deaths involved.
Sure.
And so I knew that he probably wasn't going to be able to make his bond, and he probably would be facing a lot of time, and he didn't know it. So I reached out to the schools, to the high schools, and I said, hey, I really would like to go and talk to the kids about these, consequences, criminal justice, crimes. They're things they don't know. They're things how easily you could end up in jail, how easily you can make a mistake,
right.
and then your whole future is gone.
Right.
And they were real receptive to it. So I got invited to Harlingen High School, and they welcomed me. I went into a law class at first, and then the next thing they said, you know what, those kids, they want you back.
Awesome.
So they started requesting me. So then it started going to the cafeteria, and then it was more students. And then Harlingen South, their rival, said, well, we want you over here. So then I started going over there. So I did about 15, 20 presentations at these schools. And I got to really teach these kids about crime and consequences. And there are things that kids do that until you really read the reports, you're like, wow, okay, most people don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
So long story short, I was pretty popular in Harlingen. I would also broadcast my court proceedings on Facebook. So I became kind of popular with the people, and Lydia from Baylor way back, she was watching my podcast, my live broadcast, so she nominated me. She was one of the people that nominated me for Judge of the Year for Texas. And then I had another friend, attorney, that also, and then I think some teachers from Harlingen also. And so I got an invitation to go to the Texas Municipal Court Association banquet. I didn't know anything. And they're talking about this person. They said, this person.
So you had no idea that it was
No, I
you.
had no idea. It was like a seminar and a banquet. So all these attorneys from all over Texas are there. And I'm sitting there, and then this lady goes up to the podium, and she starts talking about this person. And she said, this person initiated community service programs where they would clean graffiti at parks. I said, oh, I did that. I remember doing that. I did that when I was in my 20s, So I was listening, and they kept going, and they said, and this person was, one of the youngest judges in Texas, this and that. And then they announced my name as a Texas Municipal Court Judge of the Year. And I was like, wow, I was so honored.
That is an honor.
Yeah, I was honored. Now, I had received an email when I was a judge from that association, and they said, if you have anybody that you would like to nominate for Bailiff of the Year, Prosecutor of the Year, Clerk of the Year, and of course there was Judge of the Year. And of course, I couldn't nominate myself, but so I said, you know what, I'd like to nominate some people because I actually had a good staff. So I nominated some people, and he would have never thought. And I told him, I had a gentleman, he was in his 70s. He was the municipal court prosecutor, and he was always really good to the people. And I really liked him, how he treated people, because sometimes you get these really hardcore prosecutors. They have no compassion for people. And, in the Valley, there's a lot of poor people, so he was always really good. So I said, Henry, I want to nominate you for this award. And I said, write me a little bio about yourself. And then he emailed me the bio, and I learned a lot about him. He used to be a migrant worker. He started as a migrant worker, and then he ended up getting a job in the police station as a police officer. And then at some point later in his career, he went to law school.
That is amazing.
Yeah, and then he ended up getting the contract to be a city prosecutor. And I said, wow, that's a really good story. So I nominated him. That's a great
story, right?
And sure enough, he won also Prosecutor
that is
of the Year.
amazing.
Yeah, the two people from Harlingen.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And then después they didn't want us. A year later, we're gone. I don't think we stuck around long enough for that too, but no, we won. But yeah, they like I said, in the Valley, once there's a new election,
things change a little bit. It's
things
different.
change. Yeah, jobs change. So I reached out to other opportunities. Thank God, because Waco was one of them.
Right.
And I think I was a finalist in two other jobs, and I got all calls back from all of them. So I came to Waco and interviewed. I think there were 6 finalists, and then they called me the next day. They said,
you're it.
Yeah, we like you. So yeah, so it's been,
So how long have you been in Waco now?
I've been here since October 10th.
So 3-4 months.
Yeah,
already.
3 or 4 months. I feel like I've been here a year.
I'm sure you've been swamped at work.
Yeah, I've been swamped. There's a lot of changes I want to make.
Let's talk about some of those changes. You coming from a different city and seeing the court in different ways, and now you got a little bit of how Waco has handled its court. Let's talk about some of the changes maybe that you would like to see here in our city with the court.
Well, my motto when I became the presiding judge in Harlingen was, I don't like people to be difficult just to be difficult. Mm-hmm. That's one thing I don't like. I don't like people to work behind a window and make things difficult for people. So that's my pet peeve. Mm-hmm. So they already know. Mm-hmm. If I walk behind you, be nice to people.
Right,
because and sometimes I was the nicest person in the court because I'm a nice person. I try to be nice. I try to be respectful to people.
Sure, absolutely.
And, sometimes the judge isn't the nicest. But
and folks, he really is a nice guy. I've had some time to chat with him. He really is a nice guy.
Thank you. No, I mean, there's a time to be nice and a time where you got to be strict. But for the most part, I don't try to be difficult just to make it difficult or to be, punitive.
Right.
I think everybody has a story or a reason why they maybe can't pay a fine. And sometimes these fines get really high. So, and I noticed that even here that sometimes there were people who maybe have been in jail and then they get a failure to appear and they obviously couldn't go to jail and then they get what they call a capias or a warrant depending on what stage you're at. Then they add another $100 late fee, a $50 warrant fee. Then depending on how many cases you had, sometimes people get stopped for a ticket and they get 3. It might be an expired sticker, something, driver's license restriction, maybe speeding or whatever. So you get 3. Well, now you just added $450 extra. Or some people, there were rules that they had in place that where if you wanted to be on a payment plan, they had all these forms, that you had to fill out. And I was like, so I asked the clerks, I said, well, and you also have to pay $100 per case to be on the payment plan. So you have to put down $300 just to be on the payment plan. And I said, well, and so there was a pink form and it had all this stuff you had to fill out, references y todo, And then you wait in the line, you take it up to the counter, and then they send you back with a yellow form. The yellow form, you had to itemize all your expenses, and then you had to put where you work, and then they would call your employer. And I was like, that's just for a payment plan? Like, really? I said, I had a camera in my office, and I would see the line, and then people would walk away when they got the form, like, oh, you know what? It's easier. I'll just get the warrant. So I was like, no, we got to change that. That is not acceptable. So I revised the forms. One of the first things I did, I took away the $100 minimum requirement per case. If people are trying to pay, why make it difficult?
Right.
Right. And then I took away certain requirements that where I would make it easier for people to not have it on their record. Because, once you get anything on your record,
it stays on there.
It stays there, and then it increases your insurance rates. I said, no, we gotta fix that. So I started making it easier for people to be on deferred so that once you pay the ticket off, it's dismissed. Why not?
Right.
Some things you don't want on your record. Like sometimes one thing that's real common with people in relationships is like assault, domestic violence. But people don't realize that literally a push, a touch, an offensive touching, a poke, that could be an assault, family violence. And if you get 2 of those, then you could get charged with a felony. Continuous family violence. You're facing 10 years in prison. And I was seeing a lot of couples, and they would be in jail. People basically, I'm single, so maybe that's why. But I would see a lot of domestic, and it didn't matter if you were poor and lived in the projects or if you were rich and lived in the country club. It was the same.
Right.
Couples fighting.
Right.
and then getting, things happening at night, getting arrested, people jealous over the cell phone messages. Somebody's, why are you on your cell phone?
Or some
why
people
did you
drinking and just things.
Yeah, things would escalate, and people were fighting, and then it would go from one simple thing to where it was an argument that escalated into something. Somebody pushed somebody. If the police go to your residence, you're going to get arrested. Somebody's getting arrested, and the reason for that is because if they don't, and something happens, somebody gets killed or something as soon as they leave, there's going to be liability.
Right.
So, but a lot of people use the police to mitigate these arguments, but they don't realize, once the police are called, somebody's going to jail, and then you're going to get charges. And not only that, but they can put an EPO, and a lot of times they do, which is you can't go back to your home for 91 days.
Wow.
So then suddenly you get the victims calling, I want the charges dropped. I don't want that EPO anymore, because if you violate that EPO, then you can forfeit your bond, go back to jail with no bond. So there's so many things that can happen. And so if you have one conviction, if you get that second one, it don't matter how long ago it was. You could have been a teenager, and then you go and you're in your 40s, family man, and you get in some argument, and then you got this prior. So I like, keeping those things off your record is important to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And kids, even with public intoxication, paraphernalia. Theft is another one. For some reason, teenage girls like to shoplift. Some, but it's more girls that you get with that. They'll go shop. They'll even have the money. They'll go steal the makeup or whatever.
Sure.
But I always tell them in court, you pick up 2 Class C thefts. Class C means anything under $100. It could be $1. And then you get 2 convictions. The third one, you can go to prison for 2 years. They file it as a felony. And I tell these kids, because I had these 2 little girls come to court the other day, and they drove up in a nice little BMW, and they had money, and they shoplifted, something at Walmart that they probably could have paid for. And I said, well, I went up to them because I saw them, and I said, well, can I help you, whatever? Because I will go to the lines, and I will talk to people. I see a line, I don't like lines, and I'll go and I'll say, what can I do to help you?
Right.
And they said, oh, no, we never get in trouble. We just want to pay it. And I was like, that's a conviction. Who's going to want to hire you with a theft conviction? You're a teenager. You don't realize.
Yep.
You go apply somewhere, they're going to see that, they steal.
Yep. We
don't want to deal with them. Well, but even worse is later in life. You go to Walmart, you forget to scan something, or you do something by accident, and they say, you didn't scan that. That's a theft charge. Now you got a felony pending.
Wow.
And there was a case in Harlingen, we called it Taquito Gate.
Taquito Gate, I like that.
Yeah, it was Taquito Gate, because this guy, he went for a taquito. He was a homeless guy. They would hang out by the municipal court, and I'd see him every day. But he went to this restaurant, and apparently the taquito was much more expensive than he thought. I think it was $7. They only had 5, and he said, I ain't paying for that. So, he left, and I think he left his 5, and they said, well, that's a theft. And so, lo and behold, in his past, when he was younger, he had 2 thefts. Well, now they filed it as a felony. So now he literally was facing 2 years in prison for that, and it was for $2. Wow. And so that's... People don't think that at municipal court that you could have things that could affect your future.
Sure, but it can.
You have certain cases that can affect your future going back till the end of your life.
Yep.
So I take it very seriously that I want to make sure that I give everybody a chance to keep things off their record. Yeah,
that is wonderful, sir. And man, it feels like, I know we only know each other, but I'm enjoying the changes that you're doing here already, because even as we were talking earlier, how it's important for you that people that are even Spanish native speakers that are coming to court, that they have the ability to know what's going on and be able to be communicated to in their own language.
Right.
And I think how important that is, because to me, even as an English speaker, as a bilingual speaker, the court is a bit cumbersome in English.
Yes.
So I can't imagine if I'm a predominantly Spanish speaker and it's in a different language. how much more cumbersome that could be.
And I noticed that there were many Spanish speakers here in Waco. I did not know how many until I started seeing the lines of people, and I feel like almost that they one of the clerks said, well, I think they know you're here because I go talk to them in Spanish or Spanglish, whatever whatever it takes, but we get the point across.
Right.
And believe it or not, it tires me out because it's hard even as a lawyer, but when you're having to explain things, legal terms in Spanish, and there's not a proper translation, with some things, and so, but it's not even that the Spanish speakers have trouble with. They just sometimes they don't understand the system. They don't understand what a deferred is. They don't get some things because a lot of them, honestly, they're non-citizens. They're working here, and they don't understand the system. So not only do you have to understand the actual literal translation, you have to explain the process.
Sure.
And that's hard. I sometimes I have been tired because, I'll go through, there'll be 20 people that day that don't speak English. But I will say one thing. I will give those people credit. They will pay their fines in full. Absolutely. Whether it was Harlingen or here, man, the Mexican people, they work. I will say they will come with paint, with whatever. They come from their jobs, and it could be $1,000, and they will pay it.
Yes, sir.
And because they do not want to be in trouble.
Agreed.
And they take a lot of pride in paying their bills.
Right.
And and I don't think they get enough credit for that.
Right.
People don't know that.
Agree with you 100%.
Because there's some of us Americans, whites, blacks, a Mexican, Asian, we want a payment plan for $100, a 6-month payment plan for $100. Sometimes you get these payment plans and you're like, well, can you pay 10 a month?
Work with me here, something.
I don't know. That's going to be very difficult. And I'm like, pero the non-English speaking, man, that's consistent. They will pay.
That is amazing.
Whatever they owe. But what happens is sometimes it's not fair because of these excessive fines. And then there's also collection agency fees. Sometimes the collection agency get add on 30%. And then every time anything goes up, the 30%. And so they might have late fees, warrant fees, collection agency fees, and then just that one ticket, went from 200 something to 600.
Wow.
And there are people that actually owe in the 10,000s.
Oh my goodness.
10, 20,000. And so you can't get your driver's license.
Until that's paid off.
Until it's paid off. And some of them just give up. And there's a lot of cases like that. So one of my goals coming up that I'm already working on is I want to compile a list of all the people that owe maybe about $3,000 and up. And I want to get them into court, and I want to work with them because I have a lot of those probably are fees that could have been taken off,
right, or avoided, or
they could have been for whatever reason they kept adding up, and then the bigger it gets, the more people avoid it. Right. And because it's it's just even I couldn't pay $10,000 in municipal court fees.
Right.
So, so that's one of my plans is I'm going to get these people in, and I'm going to work a deal. Yeah. What can you pay? Right. Because you need to get your license, you need to get these warrants off. What can you pay? Right. And I just met with the sheriff's department. So I start February 1st going to the jail. So anybody that's there, the law requires that we give $150 a day credit. $150 per every 8 to 24 hours. So if somebody gets arrested, they're entitled to that jail credit. A lot of judges don't give it. And, we're required to. And a lot of people don't know to ask for it. But so there's some cases where you always usually end up in jail. Like if I see a public intoxication arrest, if it's some type of assault, if it's a theft or disorderly conduct or some things where you got arrested. When I see it, I already say, have you been to jail? And there's well, yes, I did. I was in jail for 3 days or a week or a month. Sure. You get credit for that. You're entitled to it. It's your right. And like I said, a lot of judges don't do it. So I make sure. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be going to the jail twice a week to clear anybody that has tickets and warrants. I'm going to the jail. I'm going to clear them.
Wow.
Yeah, you got to clear it out. Some people, I mean, you know, everybody has their own life story, but some people were in prison. Some people were in county jail for whatever. Right. You know, I'm not going to judge them on that. But, you know, how are you going to go to court? How are you going to appear in court if you're locked up?
Right.
And then you get these failure to appears and all these fees. Like, you know, you still got to be fair. So that's another thing that I'm in the works of doing. So,
Judge Garcia, I feel like, man, I've known you for so long and the time has flown by. So I really want to say thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're probably going 100 miles an hour right now with the new job, but we are so proud and so glad that you are here in Waco. It's exciting to hear of all the things that you're doing in our court. We are so excited that you're here. And so just really thank you so much for all of the work that you're putting in. Thank you to our audience. You have been amazing. We have some great guests lined up for you this year, so make sure you stay tuned. But once again, I'd like to thank our guest, Judge Garcia, and thank you again to the Leadership Empowerment Group for making Orgullo Hispano available. Nos vemos pronto.
Thank you.
This episode of Orgullo Hispano was made possible through the generosity of these sponsors. The Hispanic Leaders Network is a nonprofit 501c3 organization. Our vision is to develop and empower current and future leaders to make a difference in the community. To sponsor a future Orgullo Hispano podcast episode, email hlnwaco@hln-waco.org or visit the HLN website at www.hlnwaco.org.